The Battle of Mohács, how Hungary lost its independence in one day. Imagine if an entire kingdom's fate, 500 years of independence, and the future of Eastern Europe were decided in just 2 hours of fighting on a muddy field. And by sunset, one of Europe's great medieval kingdoms had effectively ceased to exist. Welcome to Ancient Battlefield. Today we're exploring one of history's most complete military disasters, where a single afternoon's mistakes destroyed the Kingdom of Hungary and opened the door to Ottoman domination that would last for centuries. By August 1526, the Ottoman Empire, under Suleiman the Magnificent, had become the most powerful military force in the world. Having already conquered Belgrade and much of the Balkans, Suleiman set his sights on Hungary, the last significant Christian barrier between the Ottoman Empire and Central Europe. But here's what's truly shocking. The Hungarian nobility walked straight into a trap that would destroy their kingdom in less time than it takes to watch a movie. King Louis II of Hungary was just 20 years old, inexperienced in warfare, and desperate to prove himself a worthy monarch. When Suleiman's massive army of over 100,000 warriors invaded Hungarian territory, Louis faced a terrible choice: wait for reinforcements from his European allies or meet the Ottomans immediately with whatever forces he could muster. Against the advice of his most experienced commanders, Louis chose to attack immediately with barely 25,000 troops. The young king believed that Hungarian heavy cavalry, which had dominated Eastern European battlefields for centuries, could defeat the Ottomans through sheer courage and martial prowess. What happened next will blow your mind. He was catastrophically wrong. Here's where it gets really interesting. The battlefield Louis chose for his stand was near the town of Mohács, on flat terrain that gave no advantage to the defenders and actually favored the Ottoman tactics. Experienced commanders begged him to withdraw to defensible positions, but the king was determined to fight and prove Hungary's strength. Suleiman's army that faced the Hungarians was a sophisticated military machine that had conquered half the known world. Elite Janissary infantry armed with firearms, massive artillery batteries, Turkish cavalry that could execute complex maneuvers, and tactical commanders who had spent decades perfecting the art of war. Can you imagine the confidence these veterans must have felt facing an impetuous young king who had never fought a major battle? The Battle of Mohács began on August 29, 1526. With Hungarian heavy cavalry charging directly at the Ottoman center in the traditional medieval style that had worked for centuries. For a brief, glorious moment, it seemed like the old tactics might still work. The Hungarian knights crashed into the Ottoman lines with tremendous impact. But that's not the most amazing part. Suleiman had deliberately weakened his center to create a trap. As the Hungarian cavalry pushed forward, convinced they were winning, Ottoman artillery opened fire from protected positions on the flanks, tearing gaps in the Hungarian formations with devastating effect. The truth is even more incredible when you consider Suleiman's tactical genius. While the Hungarians were focused on the apparently weakening Ottoman center, Turkish cavalry swept around both flanks in a massive encirclement maneuver. Within minutes, the Hungarian army found itself surrounded and being systematically destroyed by converging Ottoman forces. Here's where it gets really interesting from a military perspective. The Hungarians had relied on medieval tactics that were already obsolete. Their heavy cavalry charges, which had dominated battlefields for centuries, were annihilated by Ottoman firearms, artillery, and tactical flexibility. It was like watching the medieval era die in real time. The slaughter that followed was absolute and merciless. The Ottoman Janissaries, armed with arquebuses and supported by artillery, cut down Hungarian knights whose armor provided no protection against gunpowder weapons. Turkish cavalry pursued fleeing Hungarians across the battlefield, showing no mercy to an enemy that had walked into such an obvious trap. King Louis II himself died during the rout, though not in combat. Fleeing the battlefield on horseback, the young king's mount stumbled into a stream and he drowned under the weight of his own armor. His body wasn't found for weeks, and when it was recovered, Hungary had already descended into chaos. What happened next will blow your mind. The kingdom effectively ceased to exist, as an independent nation. The statistics of Mohács are staggering in their completeness. Over 15,000 Hungarian warriors died in just 2 hours of fighting, more than half the entire army. Among the fallen were the king, 7 bishops, hundreds of nobles, and virtually the entire Hungarian military leadership. But that's not the most amazing part. The Ottoman casualties were negligible, perhaps just a few hundred men. The truth is even more incredible than the immediate military disaster suggests. With King Louis dead and the army destroyed, Hungary had no way to resist Ottoman occupation. Within weeks, Suleiman's forces occupied the capital at Buda, and Hungary was divided between Ottoman-controlled territory, Habsburg claims, and a semi-independent Principality of Transylvania. Here's where it gets really interesting from a historical perspective. The Battle of Mohács didn't just destroy an army, it destroyed a nation. Hungarian independence, which had existed since the year 1000, effectively ended on that August afternoon. The country wouldn't regain full sovereignty until 1918, nearly 400 years later. The psychological impact across Europe was enormous. If Hungary, one of the most powerful Christian kingdoms, could be destroyed so completely in just 2 hours, what chance did other nations have against Ottoman might? The battle sent shockwaves of fear across the continent and fundamentally altered European politics. The strategic consequences were equally dramatic. With Hungary conquered, the Ottoman Empire now directly bordered Habsburg Austria. This would lead to the sieges of Vienna in 1529 and 1683, bringing Islamic armies to the gates of Central Europe and fundamentally altering the balance of power for centuries. But that's not the most amazing part. The Battle of Mohács became a byword for national catastrophe in Hungarian culture. The phrase, "more was lost at Mohács," became a proverb, meaning that disaster could always get worse, reflecting how completely that single day's fighting had destroyed Hungarian hopes. Can you imagine making one decision so catastrophically wrong that it destroys your entire kingdom in a single afternoon? King Louis II's choice to fight at Mohács instead of waiting for reinforcements stands as one of history's worst strategic mistakes, turning what might have been a defendable position into total national collapse. The Battle of Mohács, how Hungary lost its independence in one day, remains history's most complete example of how a single battle can destroy not just an army, but an entire nation. It proved that courage without tactical wisdom is simply a faster path to destruction, and that modern military tactics would inevitably overwhelm medieval warfare methods. Today, as we study the importance of adapting to changing military technology and the dangers of overconfidence in battle, we can learn from Hungary's tragic example that sometimes the greatest courage lies in retreat and preparation, rather than rushing into battle unprepared. What do you think was King Louis II's most fatal mistake in this catastrophic battle? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more decisive moments from ancient battlefields.